Lord God, thank you for this wonderful Sabbath day, and thank you for giving me, again, another chance to preach and speak for you. It's always a wonderful experience coming up here and telling everyone what you've given me to say, and I enjoy it thoroughly. Let everyone to go home safely today and enjoy their Sabbath school classes and enjoy the wonderful potluck meal after Sabbath school. And just, I thank you for everything you've given me. Amen. Amen. So, John Blatchard stood from a bench. He straightened in his army uniform and studied the crowd of people making their way through Grand Central Station. He looked for the girl whose heart he knew, but whose face he didn't. A girl wearing a red rose. His interest in her had begun 13 months before in a Florida library. Taking a book off the shelf, he found himself intrigued, not by the words of the book, but the notes penciled inside the margin. The soft handwriting reflected a thoughtful soul and an insightful mind. In the front of the book, he discovered the previous owner's name of Miss Hollis Maynell. With time and effort, he located her address. She lived in New York City. He decided to write her a letter introducing himself and inviting her to write back. The next day, though, he was shipped overseas to service in World War II. And during the next 13 months, the two grew to know each other through sending letters back and forth. Each letter was a seed falling on a fertile heart. A romance was budding. Sounds like a Hallmark movie, honestly. And Blatchard required photographs, but she never sent anything, saying that if he actually cared about her, how she looked shouldn't matter. And when the day finally came for him to return from Europe, they scheduled their first meeting, 7 p.m. at Grand Central Station in New York. "You'll recognize me," she wrote, "by the red rose I'll wear on my lapel." So at 7 o'clock, he was in the station looking for a girl whose heart he loved, but whose face he'd never seen. A young woman was coming toward him, her figure long and slim, her blonde hair laid back in curls from her delicate ears. Her eyes were blue as flowers, her lips and chin had a gentle firmness. In her pale green suit, she was like springtime come alive. He started towards her, entirely forgetting to notice that she wasn't wearing a red rose. As he moved, a small smile curved across her lips, and she said, "Going my way, sailor?" Almost uncontrollably, he made one more step closer to her, and then he saw Hollis Maynell. She was standing right behind this lady, a girl well past 40. She had gray hair tucked into a worn-through hat. She was more than plump, her thick-ankled feet thrust into low-heeled shoes. The girl in the green suit walked quickly away. He felt as though he were being split in two, his desire for the girl in the green suit, but so deep was his longing for the woman whose spirit had truly accompanied him and upheld his own. And there she stood. Her pale, plump face was gentle and sensible. Her gray eyes had a warm and kindly twinkle. He didn't hesitate. His finger gripped the small, worn blue leather copy of the book that was to identify him to her. This would not be love, per se, but it would be something more precious. Something perhaps even better than love. A friendship for which he had been and must ever be grateful for. He squared his shoulders and saluted and held out the book to the woman, even though while he spoke he did feel a little bit bitter from his disappointment. "I'm Lieutenant John Blanchard, and you must be Miss Maynell. I am so glad you could meet me. May I take you to dinner?" The woman's face broadened into a tolerant smile. "I don't know what this is about, son," she answered, "but the young lady in the green suit who just went by begged me to wear this rose on my coat. And she said if you were to ask me to dinner, I should go and tell you that she is waiting for you in the big restaurant across the street." She said it was some kind of test. Now, it's not difficult to understand Miss Maynell's wisdom. Obviously, she had no idea who this guy was, and she wanted to test more than his heart, but his character. The true nature of a heart is seen in its response to the unattractive. Even though this older woman wasn't the apple of his eye, he still knew that the character he thought she had was something special. There's a quote that I found while I was writing this sermon. It says, Tell me whom you love, and I will tell you who you are. Now, the story of Jesus is the purest love story there's ever been. Hands down, unmistakable. And I don't mean the love he showed to the disciples, or the love he showed when he healed the sick, but a love that is oftentimes not thought of when talking about the story of Jesus. Now, this is actually something I want you to do. Go ahead and just name a couple names you can think of people who were shown love from Jesus in the Bible. Just names. Lazarus. Mary Magdalene. Anyone else?
10 lepers.
10 lepers. Just anyone who was shown love. Now, it's a pretty long list. We could probably keep going all day. Even people he didn't directly meet, but people he affected, everyone he healed. But there's one person who I think is often overlooked. So after Jesus is taken away from the disciples, after he heals the man's ear, after he's tossed around and mocked, he's brought in front of a multitude of people, and they're given an option either to release this man Jesus or to release this man Barabbas. Now, if I was reading the Bible for the first time and I came to this moment, I would think, how does Jesus not be chosen? How does he not stand a chance? Like, I would have been shocked out of wherever I was sitting or standing from and thought, this is ridiculous. Poor Jesus. Who's Barabbas to stand against him? It's annoying. How could they choose a man who was described as only a bad man? Barabbas, in Matthew 27:16, he's called a notorious prisoner. In Mark 15:7 and Luke 23:19, we find out he's a rebel and he has committed murder. And in John 18:40, Barabbas is called a robber. Sounds like a pretty decent guy, right? Sounds like the kind of guy I would vote off the podium to walk the streets that my kids walk and my family shops in. This guy was spiritually disgusting. I mean, let alone that he caused a rebellion in a city that led to murders and he stole stuff. The fact that he was chosen by a group of people who probably barely knew him over Jesus, and man, they were praising that day as he walked into the city is just terrible. He was as ugly as they come. And Jesus should have won the people's hearts, no problem. What competition is there against the Son of God? He was healing the sick and bringing the dead back to life, all while preaching to the people about his Father. And the people, they said, give us Barabbas. I know Jesus knew what was coming to him, but come on. Barabbas deserved that cross. Barabbas was nothing but a criminal. But Jesus knew that. That cross was rightfully someone else's, and Jesus carried it anyway. This story of Barabbas is nothing more than a love story. Because in that moment, Jesus is loving Barabbas. And what did he get in return? Nothing. Barabbas didn't turn to him and say, Jesus, I owe you everything now that you've saved me. Thank you. I'll worship you and go pray to you later after you're hanging for me. Barabbas walked away thinking that these people loved him, thinking that he was the choice between two criminals. He probably didn't even know who Jesus was, maybe heard his name at some point. I look at Jesus up there and I look at me. Unattractive and undesirable in the eyes of the Lord. And realize that I am Barabbas. That's me up there. That's Jesus offering to take my cross. But I don't always want to let him. Sometimes I try to fight back and say, no, Jesus, this is my cross. I deserve this. I'll figure this out myself. I'll carry it. I tell him that my sins are too heavy for him. I don't understand that in order for the Father to treat Barabbas like Jesus, he had to first treat Jesus like Barabbas. I tell Jesus that I'm a sinner, that I'm not worthy. But he looks at me and says, give me your sin. No one's unworthy. I say it's too much that I deserve this burden, that I want to break my back. He says, I died for you. I broke my back. It's never too much. And why? Because Jesus just loves us. He offers a love so unconditionally perfect, and all we have to do is say yes. It was God, it is God, and always will be God to pull us up out of our deepest and darkest holes.
Amen.
We have no right to turn him away. Sometimes we may think that our burden is our burden, that since we dug ourselves into this deep, dark hole, we can pull ourselves out. Sometimes that's never going to happen. And I don't know where people get off thinking that they are enough, but you never are. All we have to do is realize that God is enough. There's a story that my grandfather told me this past Christmas Eve. He came up to visit from us. He's from Georgia. And he used to be a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, Mark Benton. I don't know if anyone knows that name. He was pretty big in the day. He's trying to help me out with this kind of stuff. And he told me a story about this war prisoner in the Civil War, where he was going off to war. But before he left, his wife and him got into a bit of a tussle. And he said that, I'm leaving off to war, find someone else. They're having some big fight, and I guess emotionally it was just a mess. He said, find someone else, I'm leaving, and he left. And about 3 years later, after he had gone to war, after he had been taken in as a prisoner, and he was released after the war ended, he wrote her a letter, not knowing whether or not she was still waiting for him, and said, if you will take me back, tie a yellow handkerchief on that old oak tree by the house. And on his way back to where they lived, on his way home, or what he thought might be home, he didn't know, honestly, he told the carriage driver about this. And as they rounded that bend to see the old oak tree, he closed his eyes and told the carriage driver to tell him what he saw. And as they rounded that bend and the old oak tree stood there, the carriage driver yelled at him to open his eyes. And that tree was covered in yellow handkerchiefs. Every branch, the entire trunk. And that's what it's like with God, with Jesus, with their love.
Amen.
No matter how long we leave him, whether it's 3 years or half of our entire life, if we come back earnestly and honestly and seeking love and forgiveness, he will give to us not what we ask for, but so much more. He won't just tie one handkerchief around a little branch, a little one that might fall off in the wind. He'll make sure that tree stays there forever as it's encased in yellow handkerchiefs. Love doesn't end just because you're not ready for it. And love is the best thing God can ever give to us. Because honestly, without love, the human race doesn't really make sense. Honestly, I would say love probably disproves a lot of evolution and stuff like that. But that's a different sermon. It's always nice to know that God is enough. That even though Barabbas gave Jesus no recognition of what he did, Barabbas probably didn't care. He killed people and stole. He didn't think about it. Jesus was still ready to give his entire life for just one person. So who are we to think that we're not worthy of that? God is enough. Oh, I thought preaching up here. Thank you. How about we bow our heads? Dear Lord, your God, I'm so glad you love us. I'm so glad that you gave your Son life for us. That in our ultimate act of defiance, you showed us the ultimate act of love. I pray that everyone here comes to realize that you are enough. That what you offer us is more than what we offer ourselves. That your love is one so marvelous, one so scandalous that you offer us everything we want with the expectation of nothing in return. I pray that we all do our best to deserve your love, and that we show you the love that you show us. Amen. Now, I see there's a baby there.